Are you the kind of person that would scroll your phone for over 30 minutes just to find the perfect restaurant to order your dinner takeout? Or spend a week's time exhausting all possible hotels in your holiday destination just to find the perfect room? Or even to the more extreme, go to 50 plus flat viewings in a matter of 2 months' time to find the best ever your budget can get you in the rental market? Well, I'm one of those lunatics who basically find it impossible to settle for the second best choice. I spend an insane amount of time to try to find the best or the best value option I can get. Sometimes I'm glad that I have this almost psychotic ability to think and research extensively before I make decisions. But a lot of the times, actually most of the times, I feel exhausted and I hate it myself for my relentless pursuit for the best. But back then, I wasn't too sure what was wrong with myself, or more precisely what was wrong with my approach to making the decisions, until I came across with the concepts of maximizers and satisficers. Hey guys, this is Alex. Welcome back to my channel. This is a place where I try to explore the theorization of our regular life using structured views and precise language to reinterpret our behaviors that simply weren't part of our vocabulary. In this video, I would like to introduce you all to the concept of maximizers and satisficer as two distinguished approaches in decision making. As you might have guessed, I was unhealthily a maximizing decision maker. After I realized my toxic maximizer trait, I went through a series of experimentation to try to achieve a more balanced way of making decisions. So in this video, I would like to walk you through my struggle as a maximizer and most importantly, the top tips I use to avoid falling back to the maximizing perfectionist extreme. Right, before we go into the details of my personal struggle, just a quick intro here of the two concepts. Firstly, maximizers. They are individuals who strive to make the best possible choice, seeking to obtain maximum benefit or utility. They often set exceptionally high standards for their decisions, which prompt them to thoroughly evaluate all available options in order to achieve that optimal outcome. On the contrary, satisficer, they are individuals who settle for a good enough choice. The concept of satisfying was coined by Herbert Simon, who is Nobel Prize winning economist and cognitive psychologist. In his 1956 paper titled Rational Choice and the Structure of the Environment, he explained the word satisficing as a combination of satisfy and sacrifice. I think it just so ingeniously shed light on the internal workings of satisficer individuals who make certain sacrifices so that they can avoid being exhausted from endless explorations, meanwhile find the option that satisfy their basic criteria. Having said that, the advantages of being a maximizer is very obvious. You think deeper and harder than others when it comes to making decisions, and you naturally tend to achieve a better outcome, sometimes even the best outcomes. However, the drawback of such an approach is also very obvious. You're more likely to suffer from difficulties with making decisions, you experience increased stress or even burnout for your almost irrational pursuit for perfectionism. If the decision you made wasn't able to meet your high expectations, you get frustrated a lot more frequently than your satisficer counterparts. There's also a higher chance that you might suffer from procrastinations as you pace back and forth among choices and can't make decisions. Life is just so tiring for maximizers. And yeah, that was pretty much my past 2 decades of life. Right now, what you are seeing on the screen, this is a lot healthier version of myself. I'm so much better to discipline my extremist maximizing trait while retaining the strengths of my critical thinking and meticulousness. To achieve that, my general tip number 1 is to assess the extent and the time scale of the impact that your decision can incur. Reason being, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to decision making. To begin with, it doesn't make sense for you to use the same level of scrutiny on deciding which flavor of sandwich you're going to have for lunch and on deciding which house to buy, vice versa. I think the kind of decision making approach you take should be congruent with the type of decisions that you are faced up with. Is it a big decision or a small decision? Is it long-term or short-term? To make it more practical, I have created at a very high level two broad categories of decisions that you should consider and differentiate. First one, I call them decisions that are impactful and have enduring effect. The second one, I call them trivial and one-off decisions. I'll go on to explain my tips for each kind of these decisions in a bit more detail next. Let's start with the easier one, trivial and one-off decisions. Decisions such as deciding on a place to order takeouts or picking an outfit for a regular day, etc. These all belong to these categories. For such less serious and more short-term decisions, it makes more sense to steer your approach to more of a satisficer. You don't want to overspend your time and energy to overthink about these things, because it's simply not worth it. My top tip when it comes to making decisions as such is to be clear with your objective, aka what you're trying to achieve from these decisions. I first learned about the exploration versus exploitation trade-off from Brian Christensen and Tom Griffin's book titled Algorithms to Live By, The Computer Science of Human Decisions. If the title of the book already bores you, don't have to look at it. Put it concisely, the explore-exploit trade-off is a balancing act in decision-making between trying new options to gain new experience and information and using existing knowledge to achieve immediate benefits and utility. From a decision objective perspective, I believe all of us have had this experience, say for example, when it comes to picking a restaurant. On Sunday, we're feeling exploratory, we are tired from our usual go-to spots, we want to be surprised with new flavors and new cuisines, but there will also be some other days when we just want to binge our familiar favorites and get the guaranteed satisfactions of making the safe choice. Once you're clear with your objective, if you're feeling exploitative, it's going to be a very straightforward choice to play your go-to safe card. If you're feeling a bit adventurous, you can use a random choice generator online to help you make a call. Let the fate take where it will take you. So good. Okay, now that we've got the easier kind of decisions off the tables, let's get into the second kind of decisions, impactful and having enduring effect. Decisions such as long-term renting, first-time buying a home, or finding a lifelong partner, etc. belongs to this category. For important and long-term decisions of such, I think it's the best to steer your approach to more of a maximizer stance than a satisficer. You would want to have done a decent amount of research and have a good understanding of the available options in the field before making the final call. The tricky part here is you want to be a maximizer-ish person, but not a maximizer. To do that, I have 3 useful tools to keep you from going to the extreme. Firstly, you should have clear criteria. Before you go deep into the field and become overwhelmed with availability of choices, or maybe just after you have done some preliminary research, you should have established your matrix of assessment, aka criteria. These criteria should have specific characteristics in order to be effective. To begin with, the criteria should be actionable and enforceable. By actionable, the criteria should be something that you can objectively judge on and compare to in order to make a move. Take my rental experience in London last year as an example. A rental budget is an actionable criteria because as long as the price of the properties that I'm looking at exceeds my budget, I can pass on and move on to the next one. But enforceable, the criteria should have governing power. This could be achieved by having a second person to oversee my decision-making process. In the previous rental example, my partner and I agree on a set of criteria to choose a rental properties. And throughout the process, we held each other accountable to stay committed to those criteria. Think of these criteria as codes written by a programmer. Me, as the computer, should be abided by the rule that was hard-coded in my system. In addition to being actionable and enforceable, the criteria should be concise and hierarchized. Still the renting example, I kept a short list of my criteria neat and concise. I list out 4 must-have features like price, commute times, or level of securities. If a property does not satisfy any one of these must-have criteria, it would be a straightforward deal breaker for me. In addition to the 4 must-have features, I also set aside 5 nice-to-have features. such as accessibility to green space and proximity to the gym, etc., to aid my assessment of the properties that made it to the final round. A concise list objectifies and minimizes the decision processing time. Let's be real here, you're not gonna have everything in your apartment. Well, of course, unless you're the 1%. If you have an infinite list of things you want in one single rental properties, then you would end up with nothing. So it's important to make criteria the constraint of your limitless and almost excruciating maximizing exploration. Other than having clear criteria, the second tool you can use is to utilize better and reliable information source. Research and information gathering could be the most time-consuming part of decision making, learned from my previous experience, and being mindless and aimless with reading and browsing for information can drag out the research time and prolong decision making significantly. Back to our rental example again, learning from my experience, browsing broad and wide on general properties websites/platforms, such as in the UK we have Zoopla and Rightmove, drowns you with informations. I later found out that a large proportion of property informations are circulated on agency exclusive email subscriptions, and a lot of fresh to the market properties are firstly advertised on these exclusive email subscriptions and were rented out before there is a need to advertise them wider on general property platforms. If you already have a preferred real estate agency, it is very time efficient to sign yourself up for that agency's email list, or even better, establish personal liaison with a specific agent you know of and knows about your search criteria. Think of your agent as your savvy property information filter. Clarify your expectations with your agent so that they would send available properties that suit your criteria to your way firsthand. If you think about it further, the agent's economic incentive to get the deal done in order to get his or her commissions works well for us as renter. The agent's private economic interest motivates them to provide you with the best fit information, which saves you the time from browsing wide and broad across the entire rental market. If renting is not something that you can relate to, think about dating. I think the same idea also applies to friend-introduced love partners. Your trusted friend is a reliable source of information, so rather than trying to bump into a stranger and start to get to know about them from scratch, use the wisdom of your trusted friend to expedite your search time for the better half. I use trusted source of information not just for decisions that are impactful and have enduring effect. I also use it for short-term decisions and less serious ones. Say for example, when it comes to deciding which frying pan or cooking appliances to get, I will go to which.com. Or when it comes to choosing snacks and cooking condiments, I would look for the Great Taste certificates on the product's packaging. A side note here, Great Taste is a foodie organization which is local to the UK, I think. I have followed the advice and recommendations from these two sources many times in the past, and the results always turns out very good. Thanks to the long-standing process of building the trust with these platforms, I'm able to take information from them with a good level of confidence. All I'm saying here is that if we can avoid working too hard to make decisions, we can find ways to work smarter. But again, using another source of information doesn't mean to take your critical thinking hat off completely. Do remember to do a simple sense check rather than following blindly. My final tool. It's actually quite simple, which is just to keep in mind the dark side of overly maximizing your decision making. Not long ago, I watched Johnny Harris' videos on why you're so tired and learned about that when we are making decisions, all the neurons in our brains need to communicate and transmit signals or impulses. These neurotransmissions are enabled by this very important chemical called glutamate. But glutamate does not immediately go away once the neural signals are transmitted. They hang around. So if there's more need for you to make decisions, there will be more need for your brain to produce glutamate to enable neurotransmission. And the more glutamate are produced that stick to your neural networks, causing congestions and clogging, which manifested as increased difficulties with decision making and mental fatigues as a result. Before learning about Maximiser as a concept, I was not able to diagnose and pinpoint what was wrong with my decision making. I was hesitant, I was procrastinating, and trap into this cycle of grinding for the best outcome. Looking retrospectively now, overly maximizing has done more harm than good to me in multiple occasions. It has caused me to be less cheerful and less celebratory of what I have achieved and created a whole lot of mental fatigues. So yeah, I think having the language to describe such behavior is very, very powerful on its own already. It enables me to rethink and rebalance myself to a more rational approach to making decisions. That's my videos on how I struggle as a maximizer decision makers and the top lesson I learned from my struggles. If you are a hopeless maximizer like me, I really hope some of the above suggestions would be of some help. The most important part of improving my decision making, ironically, was simply to recognize that I was overly maximizing and was putting way too much effort and pressure on myself to achieve the optimal outcome. Meticulousness is important when it comes to serious decisions that would have sustained impact on your life. But throughout the course of a person's life, not all decisions are made equal, and balancing out your approach to manage all different sorts of decisions is the happy philosophy of life. I wish all of you have a fulfilling and healthy relationship with your decisions. See you in the next one.
See ya later. See ya later.